My name is Mara Ellis, and I'm 24 years old. When I was 12, my mother sent me away because I wasn't as smart as my twin. That was the reason she gave everyone, polished and softened until it almost sounded reasonable. She said I needed a quieter place. She said I needed structure. She said I was falling behind and dragging the family down with me. But I remember the real words she used at the kitchen table that night, after my report card landed beside my untouched dinner. She looked at me like I was a problem she was tired of solving and said, "Some children are born to rise, and some children need to stop holding everyone else back." I was not failing because I didn't care. I was failing because every test felt like a trial, every grade felt like a verdict, and every comparison reminded me that love in my house had conditions. I loved drawing. I loved stories. I could turn a blank page into something that made people stop and stare. But none of that mattered in a house where worth was measured in trophies, advanced classes, and perfect scores. That night, after being told again that I was embarrassing the family, I walked out into the cold without a coat, because staying felt worse than leaving. By morning, they had found me. I thought maybe fear would make my mother hold me tighter. Instead, she packed my bag. I begged her not to send me away. I promised I would study harder, speak less, be better, be easier to love. She didn't cry. She didn't hesitate. She only said she had another daughter with a future to protect. Years later, when they tried to reconnect, I introduced them to my new family and called them cold-blooded wolves. And the moment my mother and sister heard that, the room went so quiet I could hear my own heartbeat. Before I tell you what they said next and what happened after they walked into the life I built without them, tell me this. What time is it where you are right now? And where are you watching from? I want to know how far this story travels. The drive from Boston to the small Montana town where my Aunt June lived felt like being carried away from my own life while I was still breathing. My father, Paul, drove most of the way with both hands locked on the steering wheel, and my mother, Vivian, sat in the passenger seat answering work emails like she was taking me to summer camp instead of removing me from the only home I had ever known. My twin sister, Sloane, was not allowed to come. That hurt more than the packed suitcase at my feet, more than the silence in the car, more than the way my mother kept telling my father not to make this harder than it had to be. When we arrived, Aunt June was standing on the porch of a little blue house with chipped paint, wind chimes, and flower pots that looked like they had survived storms and stayed anyway. She hugged me before I could say anything, and that almost broke me. My mother gave her a folder with my school records, medical forms, and a check, like I was a problem being transferred to another department. She told Aunt June that I needed discipline, structure, and fewer distractions. Aunt June looked at my red eyes, then at the sketchbook I was clutching against my chest, and said, "Maybe what she needs is one person who asks what she is good at before deciding what is wrong with her." My mother did not like that. She kissed my forehead without warmth, told me to behave, and left before I could beg again. For the first 2 weeks, I barely spoke. I slept with my suitcase beside the bed because part of me thought if I unpacked, it meant I accepted that I had been thrown away. Aunt June never forced me. She made pancakes for dinner when I refused breakfast. She left art supplies on the kitchen table without making a speech. She drove me to school without warning me not to embarrass her. The first time I brought home a C on a math quiz, I braced myself for shouting. Aunt June looked at it, nodded, and asked, "Did you understand more this week than last week?" I said yes. She smiled and said, "Then we keep going." That sentence changed something in me. At my old school, I had been the disappointing twin, the slower twin, the one teachers recognized because my sister had already impressed them. In Montana, I was just Mara, quiet at first, strange maybe, but not automatically second place. My grades did not magically become perfect, but my hands stopped shaking before tests. I joined the art club because Aunt June slipped the form into my backpack and said I could throw it away if I wanted. I did not throw it away. By spring, I was painting sets for the school play, designing posters for the library book sale, and helping the local animal shelter make flyers for adoption weekends. For the first time, adults praised me for something real, not because I had beaten someone else, not because I had fit into a plan made before I was born, because I had created something useful and beautiful. Sloane messaged me when she could. At first, she was kind. She told me she missed me, that the house felt weird without me, that Mom said this was temporary. But temporary became 1 month, then 6 months, then years. My mother never called unless Aunt June forced the issue. My father sent money, birthday cards with stiff messages, and once a box of expensive pencils that my mother probably picked out online without knowing what I actually liked to draw. Sloane kept winning awards. She sent pictures of certificates, debate medals, honor society pins, and college brochures. I told myself I was proud of her, and I was. But every message reminded me that she had stayed in the spotlight while I had been moved out of the frame. One afternoon, when I was 15, I sold my first drawing at a farmer's market. It was a small watercolor of the town library after snowfall, and an older woman bought it for $20 because she said it made the building look like a place where lonely kids could feel safe. I carried that $20 bill home like it was a national award. Aunt June did not laugh. She put it in a cheap frame with a note underneath that said, "Mara's first sale, proof that talent counts too." That night, I waited for the sadness to come, the old ache of wishing my mother had seen it. But instead, I felt something warmer and stronger. I felt seen by the people who were actually there. I did not know it yet, but that was the beginning of the family I would one day choose. By the time I graduated high school, I had stopped waiting for my mother to change her mind. I still had days when a certain word or tone could drag me back to that kitchen table, but I was no longer the girl begging to be kept. Aunt June helped me apply to a state university in Montana with a strong visual communication program, and when the acceptance email came in, she screamed so loudly our neighbor thought something was wrong. My mother sent a short text that said, "Interesting choice. I hope it becomes practical." That was the closest thing I got to congratulations. Sloane called me that night from Boston, where she had already been accepted into an elite pre-law program. She sounded happy for me, but there was always something careful in her voice, like she was afraid that praising me too much would make her disloyal to our mother. She said, "Art school sounds fun. Mom just worries about stability." I almost told her that being loved only when you were impressive was not stability, but I swallowed it. I had learned that some people can witness your pain and still treat peace as more important than truth. College was not easy. I worked at the campus print shop, took freelance jobs designing menus and event posters, and spent nights learning software from free videos because I could not afford extra classes. But every hard thing felt different because it belonged to me. No one was standing over my shoulder telling me that my dreams were embarrassing. During my second year, I volunteered at a fundraiser for a wildlife rescue outside town. They needed someone to paint signs, and I needed portfolio work. That was where I met Caleb Wolf. He was carrying a crate of injured birds when he noticed I had painted a fox on the donation board with one ear slightly bent. He stopped, smiled, and said, "That fox looks like it has survived a lot and still knows something we don't." It was the strangest compliment I had ever received, and somehow the most accurate. Caleb was not loud or flashy. He worked with his family at their rescue ranch, fixing fences, transporting injured animals, helping with community programs, and doing the kind of quiet work that did not look impressive online but mattered deeply in real life. His family was known around town as the Wolves, and everyone joked that they moved like a pack. His mother brought food to anyone in trouble. His brothers showed up with tools before anyone asked. His grandmother remembered every birthday in the county. They were warm, but not soft. If someone hurt one of theirs, they did not explode. They got calm, they got organized, they got facts. Caleb once told me, "In my family, cold-blooded means you do not panic when someone tries to scare you. You breathe, you think, and you protect the pack." I did not understand then how important that sentence would become. Caleb and I became friends first. He would sit with me at the print shop during late shifts, bringing coffee and pretending he needed help designing rescue flyers. I helped his family create a logo for the ranch, then a website, then illustrated a children's pamphlet about local wildlife safety. Those projects led to more work. A bookstore hired me, then a literacy nonprofit. Then a small publisher looking for an illustrator for a picture book. By 22, I had opened Mara Wolf Studio, even before Wolf became my legal name, because Caleb proposed under the old cottonwood tree behind the rescue barn with his entire family hiding badly behind hay bales. We married in a simple outdoor ceremony. Aunt June walked me down the aisle. My father sent a card and money. My mother did not come. Sloane came, but she spent half the reception answering calls from our mother, then told me later, "Mom said she just was not ready." I said, "She had 10 years." Sloane looked away. Last year, Caleb and I had our daughter, Lily, and holding her for the first time made me understand exactly how unnatural my mother's choice had been. Lily was tiny, helpless, perfect, and I could not imagine looking at any child and deciding she was too inconvenient to love. Aunt June lived 20 minutes away and came over with soup, diapers, and unsolicited advice. The Wolves treated Lily like the newest member of the pack, passing her from arm to arm, whispering promises she was too young to understand. My studio grew slowly but steadily. I worked on children's books, library campaigns, educational posters, and branding for small businesses that believed creativity was not a luxury, but a language. Then one Thursday evening, while I was rocking Lily to sleep, my phone lit up with Sloane's name. Her message said, "Mom wants to reconnect. She says enough time has passed." I stared at those words for a long time. Enough time had passed for what? For her guilt to fade? For my memories to become inconvenient? For her to return without ever saying the one sentence I had waited years to hear? I looked across the room at Caleb, who was folding baby blankets with the serious focus he gave everything. I told him my mother wanted to visit. He did not tell me what to do. He only asked, "Do you want closure, or do you want them to finally see what they threw away?" I looked down at my sleeping daughter and realized the answer was both. My mother's message came the next morning, and it sounded exactly like her. Clean, controlled, and empty, where the heart should have been. She wrote that she and my father would be in Montana soon for a professional conference, and she thought it might be healthy for all of us to reconnect. She said family misunderstandings should not last forever. She said life was short. She did not say she was sorry. She did not ask whether I had been lonely. She did not ask what it felt like to be 12 years old and sent away with a suitcase while my twin stayed home. She did not even mention Lily until the last line, where she wrote, "Sloane tells me there is a child now." A child. Not my daughter. Not her granddaughter. A child. I should have ignored it. A healed person might have blocked the number, kissed her baby, and gone back to work. But healing is not always clean. Sometimes you can love your life and still want the people who broke your heart to stand in the middle of it and understand they did not destroy you. I wrote back politely. I told her they could come for dinner on Saturday. Then I invited Sloane too. She responded almost immediately with a heart emoji, as if this were a reunion instead of a test none of us had studied for. I told Caleb everything. I told Aunt June too, because I had learned from the first 12 years of my life that secrets only protect the person doing the damage. Aunt June went quiet for a long moment, then asked, "Do you want me there as your aunt or as your witness?" I said. Both. Caleb told his family, and the wolves did what wolves do. They did not create drama. They created structure. His mother planned dinner. His grandmother baked bread. His brothers offered to take Lily if things became too tense. Caleb asked if I wanted the family photo albums out or put away. I set out. Not to brag. Not to punish. Because the truth was sitting in those pages. My college graduation, where Aunt June cried so hard her mascara ran. My first studio sign, crooked because Caleb and his brothers installed it in the rain. My book launch at the town library, where children lined up to have me draw little animals inside their copies. Lily's first week home, wrapped in a yellow blanket made by Caleb's grandmother. 10 years of life my mother had missed because she decided I was not worth raising. On Saturday morning, Sloane called me. For a moment, I heard the sister I used to whisper with under blankets before everything changed. She said, "Please do not turn this into a courtroom." I told her I was not the one who had spent my childhood on trial. She sighed and said Mom was nervous. I said Mom should be. That silence between us was heavy, but not empty. It carried every time she had chosen comfort over courage. I did not hate Sloane. That was what made it worse. Hate would have been simple. I loved her, but I no longer trusted her to stand beside me when the truth became inconvenient. Before they arrived, I stood in the kitchen with my hands pressed against the counter, trying to slow my breathing. Caleb came up behind me and did not touch me until I leaned back first. That was one of the things I loved about him. He never assumed he had the right to handle my pain. He waited to be invited. "You do not have to prove you survived," he said quietly. I looked around at the house we had built together, at the drawings on the walls, at Lily's tiny socks near the couch, at Aunt June arranging plates with trembling hands she was trying to hide, at the Wolf family moving calmly around me like a shield that did not need to announce itself. "I know," I said. "But tonight, they are going to see who stayed." When the doorbell rang, nobody moved for half a second. It sounded too normal for what was about to happen. Caleb opened the door, and there they were. My father looked older, smaller somehow, like years of silence had folded him inward. My mother looked almost the same, perfectly dressed, perfectly composed, carrying flowers like a woman arriving at a polite social obligation. Sloane stood beside her, beautiful, nervous, and already watching my face for signs of danger. My mother smiled and said, "Mara, you look well. Not happy birthday for the ones she missed. Not congratulations on your marriage. Not I am sorry. Just, you look well." I stepped aside and let them into the home they had never helped me build. Dinner started with the kind of politeness that makes every fork sound too loud. Caleb introduced himself with a steady handshake. Aunt June hugged my father but not my mother, and my mother noticed. The Wolves were welcoming, because that was who they were, but nobody pretended this was normal. Lily was asleep in her bassinet near the living room, and my mother glanced at her from a distance like she was observing a painting in a gallery. Sloane went over first, touched Lily's blanket, and whispered that she was beautiful. I believed she meant it. That almost made the rest hurt more. My mother walked around the room while dinner was being set down, studying our photos. She stopped at one of me standing in front of my studio sign, then at another of me holding my first illustrated book. "So this is your work," she said. "It is very charming." Charming. That was her word for anything she did not respect, but could not openly insult in company. Caleb's mother smiled and said, "Mara's work helps children understand stories before they can read every word. That is not charming. That is important." My mother's smile tightened. We sat down. For a while, everyone tried. Caleb's father asked about the conference. My father asked Aunt June about the town. Sloane complimented the food 3 times too many. Then my mother placed her napkin in her lap, turned to me and said, "I hope you understand now that difficult decisions were made for your benefit." The table changed. No one moved, but the air sharpened. I asked, "Which difficult decision?" She gave a soft laugh, the kind meant to make me sound unreasonable before I even spoke. "Sending you somewhere quieter. You were struggling, Mara. You needed a different environment." Aunt June put her fork down. My father stared at his plate. Sloane whispered, "Mom?" But my mother kept going because people like her mistake silence for permission. She said, "You have clearly done well in your own way, and that is good. But at the time, your behavior was affecting the whole family. We had to think about Sloane's future too." There it was. Not hidden behind polite words anymore. The same old math. One child had a future. One child was an obstacle. I felt Caleb's hand under the table, not grabbing mine, just resting there in case I wanted it. I did. I took it. Then I stood. My chair made a small sound against the floor, and every face turned toward me. I picked up my glass of water because I did not trust myself with anything stronger. "I want to make a toast," I said. My mother blinked, surprised, like she expected tears and got a speech instead. I looked at Aunt June first. "To the woman who took in a 12-year-old girl with a suitcase, a sketchbook, and no idea why she was so easy to leave. You did not fix me because I was never broken. You gave me room to grow." Aunt June's eyes filled, but she did not look away. I turned to Caleb. "To my husband, who never once asked me to become impressive before deciding I was worthy of love." Caleb's jaw tightened, and his thumb moved gently across my knuckles. Then I looked around the table at his parents, brothers, grandmother, the people who had shown up with soup, tools, invoices, baby blankets, and loyalty. And to my new family, the Wolf family, the pack that taught me what family is supposed to feel like. My mother's expression shifted. She knew something was coming, but she did not know where to hide from it. I turned back to her and Sloane. "These are the cold-blooded wolves," I said. "Cold-blooded enough to stay calm when someone tries to rewrite history. Smart enough to keep receipts. Loyal enough to never abandon one of their own just because loving them became inconvenient." The silence that followed was complete. Even Lily seemed to sleep more quietly. My mother went pale first. Sloane's mouth opened, then closed. My father looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. My mother finally whispered, "How dare you speak to me that way in front of strangers?" Caleb's grandmother, who had been silent all night, said, "We are not strangers. We are the people who came after you left." That was when my mother's eyes filled with tears, but they were not the kind of tears I had dreamed of as a child. They were angry tears, humiliated tears, tears for the image of herself being damaged. Sloane stood so quickly her chair rocked. She said I had planned this, that I had invited them only to shame them, that I was being cruel. I looked at her and felt something old inside me finally loosen. "No," I said. "I invited you to meet the people who raised what you threw away." My father flinched. My mother grabbed her purse. At the door, she turned back and said in a voice so low it barely sounded human, "You will regret making us look like monsters." I answered before fear could stop me. "I did not make you look like anything. I only stopped hiding what you did." They left without eating dessert. No one celebrated. Revenge in real life does not always feel like fireworks. Sometimes it feels like a room full of people breathing again after holding the truth for too long. Aunt June hugged me in the kitchen and cried into my hair. Caleb took Lily upstairs so the noise would not wake her. Sloane texted me one sentence an hour later. "You went too far." I looked at that message, then at the table where my real family was quietly cleaning up the mess my old family left behind, and I knew the night was not over. People like my mother do not lose control and walk away. They look for a stage where they can perform the version of the story that makes them innocent. 2 days later, my mother found her stage. I woke up to 17 missed calls, 6 messages from clients, and a text from Sloan that said, "Please do not react emotionally." That was how I knew she had already chosen a side. My mother had written a long post on Facebook, then copied a cleaner version onto LinkedIn, because apparently even public humiliation needed professional formatting. She said she had tried to reconnect with her estranged daughter after years of heartbreak, only to be ambushed at dinner by a hostile new family. She said I mocked her, rejected her, and called innocent people wolves while my baby slept nearby. She said parents are not perfect, but adult children should not weaponize childhood misunderstandings for attention. Childhood misunderstandings. That phrase made my hands go cold. Being sent away at 12 was not a misunderstanding. Being ignored for birthdays, graduations, illness, and my wedding was not a misunderstanding. Being told my twins' future mattered more than my place in the family was not a misunderstanding. Then I saw who she had tagged. Not just relatives, not just old family friends. She had tagged the literacy nonprofit I worked with, the small publisher preparing to release my next illustrated book, 2 bookstore owners, a library director, and 3 local business clients whose logos I had designed. Sloan had shared the post and written, "This is what happens when resentment becomes someone's whole identity." That one hurt in a different place. My mother's cruelty was familiar. Sloane's betrayal still had the power to surprise me. For the first hour, I panicked. I had built my studio carefully. I did not have a giant company behind me or a legal department ready to step in. My reputation was personal. My clients trusted me around stories, children, education, and community projects. A messy family scandal could cost me work I could not afford to lose. One client paused a project and said they needed clarity. Another asked if the accusations were true. A third simply wrote, "Is everything okay?" I stood in the laundry room with my phone in my hand, shaking so badly I almost dropped it. Caleb found me there. He read the post once. His face did not change much, but his voice got quiet in the way that meant a storm had just become organized. "Do not answer yet," he said. "We save everything first." That was when the cold-blooded wolves became exactly what I had called them. Caleb took screenshots of every post, every tag, every comment. His brother made a timeline of my life, from the day I was sent away to the day my mother contacted me. His mother gathered photos from graduations, birthdays, and studio events my mother had missed. Aunt June wrote down dates, including the months when my mother refused calls and the years when she never visited. Nobody screamed. Nobody threatened. Nobody behaved the way my mother wanted them to behave. They became calm, precise, and impossible to push around. I wanted to write a furious response. I wanted to say every ugly thing I had swallowed since childhood. Caleb read the draft and said, "It is true, but it sounds like pain. Give them truth that sounds like evidence." So I wrote again. This time, I kept it simple. I said my mother had the right to her feelings, but not to damage my professional relationships with a misleading story. I stated that I was sent away at 12 after years of being compared to my twin. I stated that my mother had not maintained a relationship with me, had not attended my graduation, wedding, or the birth of my daughter, and had contacted me recently without an apology. I stated that the dinner had been painful, but no one had threatened her. I ended by asking clients and colleagues not to engage in harassment toward anyone, and by saying I would continue protecting my family and my work with honesty. Aunt June commented underneath with her own account. She did not insult my mother once. She simply confirmed that she had raised me from age 12 because my parents chose not to. Then Caleb's mother commented. Then the library director, who had known me since college. then the author whose book I illustrated. People started asking my mother why she had tagged my clients in a private family matter. Someone from her professional circle asked why a director of admissions would publicly shame an adult daughter over childhood academic struggles. My mother deleted that comment. Someone screenshot it. By evening, the post had turned against her. The publisher who had paused my project emailed me and said they were sorry I had been dragged into something so personal. The nonprofit not only kept my contract, they asked if I would consider illustrating a new educational campaign about children learning in different ways. Meanwhile, my mother's LinkedIn post reached people she had not expected. Parents from the private school network where she worked began commenting carefully, asking whether her views on children with different learning styles reflected her professional values. A board member from a scholarship committee removed her name from an upcoming panel on family excellence. Sloan, who worked as an education consultant, received messages from colleagues asking why she had publicly mocked someone discussing childhood abandonment. For the first time in my life, my mother's version of reality was not the loudest one in the room. That night, my phone rang. Her name appeared on the screen, and for one foolish second, the child in me hoped she was calling to apologize. I answered. She did not say hello. She said, "Take your post down. You are ruining me." I looked at Caleb, at Aunt June, at Lily sleeping against his shoulder, and I felt strangely calm. "No," I said. "You posted the lie. I posted the timeline." My mother breathed hard through the phone. Then she said the cruelest thing she could think of. "You always were impossible to love." 10 years earlier, that sentence would have destroyed me. This time, I looked around at the people who had made her wrong. "Maybe for you," I said. "Not for them." Then I hung up. The next morning, Sloan came to my studio without calling first. She looked exhausted, like she had spent the night trying to hold together a story that kept splitting open. I had just finished a sketch for the new literacy campaign when she walked in, and for a moment we were children again. Two girls with the same face standing on opposite sides of a room. Neither of us knew how to escape. She said Mom was spiraling. She said Dad was furious, but mostly at the embarrassment. She said people from their professional world were asking questions, and Mom's supervisor had requested a meeting about online conduct. I waited for the apology that should have come next. Instead, Sloan said, "You need to give her something. Just a small public apology. Say emotions were high. Say you regret the wording." I stared at her. "You want me to apologize because her attempt to ruin my reputation did not work?" Sloan flinched, but she kept going. She said Mom had sacrificed for us. She said I did not understand the pressure our parents were under. She said family matters should not be judged by strangers online. That was when I realized my sister was not trapped between us. She was standing exactly where she had chosen to stand. Maybe she loved me. Maybe she even knew I was right. But when the truth threatened the version of success she had built her life around, she protected the lie. I told her I would not apologize for telling the truth. I would not protect the image of people who abandoned a child and called it parenting. Sloane's eyes filled with tears, and she whispered, "You are going to break this family." I almost laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was such an old trick. Blame the person holding the mirror for the face reflected in it. "No," I said. "I am the part of this family that survived being broken." After she left, Caleb and I sent one formal letter through an attorney. Nothing dramatic. No lawsuit filed that day. Just a clear demand that my mother remove the posts, stop contacting my clients, and stop making false claims that could harm my business. Attached were screenshots, timelines, witness statements, and proof that her posts had already interfered with my work. The cold-blooded wolves had built a folder so complete that even my mother could not twist it. By that evening, both posts were gone. In their place, my mother posted a short statement about stepping away from social media to focus on personal reflection. It did not include my name. It did not include an apology. But the damage to her perfect image had already happened. Within a week, she was removed from a private school admissions panel where she had been scheduled to speak about identifying potential in children. A phrase like that would have been funny if it had not been so sad. Several parents wrote to her office asking whether children who were creative, anxious, or academically average were treated as problems under her guidance. She did not lose everything, and I do not need to pretend she did for the story to feel complete. But she lost the one thing she valued most, the right to be seen as an unquestioned authority on successful families. My father called once. He said he wished things had gone differently. I asked him which things: the dinner, the post, or the day he drove me away and let my mother call it necessary? He had no answer. Sloane's consequences were quieter. Her colleagues did not cancel her, but they stopped seeing her as the flawless daughter with the flawless family. A school district postponed a workshop she was supposed to lead on student confidence after parents raised concerns about her public comments. For the first time, she had to explain why she had defended cruelty just because it came from our mother. A month later, she sent me a message that said, "I am starting to understand some things." I did not answer right away. Forgiveness, if it ever comes, will not be rushed just because someone finally gets uncomfortable with their own choices. As for me, my studio did not collapse. It grew. The nonprofit hired me for the campaign about different kinds of intelligence, and I poured my whole heart into it. I drew children who solved problems with music, movement, color, kindness, memory, patience, and imagination. I drew kids who had been told they were too much, too slow, too quiet, too distracted, and I made sure every one of them looked worthy of being loved. When the posters went up in libraries across the county, Aunt June stood beside one and cried. Caleb held Lily up so she could touch the picture of a little girl painting stars on a classroom wall. In that moment, I understood the lesson my life had been trying to teach me. Education is not supposed to teach children that love must be earned through perfection. Real education gives people valuable knowledge about themselves and the world. It helps them grow, not shrink. It teaches adults to recognize different strengths instead of punishing children for not matching one narrow definition of success. My mother thought she had thrown away the weaker twin. What she really did was hand me to people who knew how to help me become whole. Blood can explain where you came from, but it does not get to decide where you belong. Family is not always the people who share your name. Sometimes family is the aunt who frames your first $20, the husband who saves evidence before anger, the in-laws who stand behind you without stealing your voice, and the child who teaches you that no one should ever have to be impressive to deserve protection. I did get revenge, but not by becoming cruel like my mother. I got revenge by building a life so full of love, work, boundaries, and truth that her rejection no longer had the power to define me. And if the people who abandon you ever come back demanding forgiveness without accountability, remember this: you are allowed to open the door, but you are also allowed to stand in front of the family that actually stayed and say, "These are my people now."